adventure, intrigue, lost cities, ancient mysteries, and more on this week's episode of East10 Investigates. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the East10 Outpost. I'm Cody, and I'm going to be your guide today into a subject matter that, well, we're going to need to agree to be adults about. Because in 2025, it's so taboo, it's considered basically radioactive. But 100 years ago, that couldn't have been further from the case, and was so ubiquitous around the old world, it could even be found on highway signs here in the United States of America. I'm talking, of course, about the infamous swastika. A symbol that, just upon saying its name, probably caused some sort of reaction or recoil, but a mere 100 years ago, dating back all the way into the Ice Age, this symbol was something that was unifying to our ancestors. Something that was so prevalent throughout the old world, no matter where you were, or who you were, what your lineage was, this symbol had universal meaning to you, and it transcended everybody on our planet. Literally. So join me if you dare as we begin to roll back 100 years of stink and bastardization on a symbol that has been a uniting factor for our species up until then. Because today, East10 investigates the cosmic origins of the swastika. Now, before we frolic too far into the weeds of this conversation, it's important we define what it is and isn't going to be. I've never believed in a master race theory, so you're not going to hear me discuss that in this video or on my channel ever for that matter. I also don't think it was the work of a global civilization like Atlantis spreading and permeating it throughout the old world. If either of those things disappoint you, I would encourage you to go check out a Robert Sepper video. That said, what we're going to be discussing is what I believe the origins of the swastika are. And it's such an archaic symbol, I believe the theft of it by the Nazi Party deserves some justice. Of all the atrocities Hitler committed, the theft of a 15,000-year-old symbol I consider no small matter. So if all of that sounds good to you, let's dive in and check it out. The Cosmic Dawn, where the swastika was born. Now, to begin our journey, we're going to need to rewind the clocks back 15,000 years to the dawn of humanity and into the last ice age, because that's where this symbol's incredibly archaic roots lie. Mammoth tusks have been found carved with the swastika in Mazin, Ukraine, dated to around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, but a stunning 2025 find in a Siberian cave has pushed the dating all the way back to 15,000 BCE, showing this symbol is prehistoric through and through. It's a glimpse into the minds of our Ice Age ancestors and what exactly they found to be important. But the question still remains, how exactly did it spread around the globe? Well, that answer, I believe, lies in the stars. Imagine standing under a clear, ancient night sky with no lights around to muddy the view, just watching the constellations turn. One would stand out, Ursa Major, what we know now as the Big Dipper. Russian archaeologist Gendy Zdanovich, who studied the Sinatra culture around 2000 BC, believes the swastika mirrors the universe, reflecting the spinning motion of Ursa Major around Polaris, the North Star. Philosopher Rene Guénon took it one step further, suggesting that if you trace the Big Dipper's yearly cycle, its positions at the spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox, and winter solstice, you see a pattern like the swastika's arms. It's as if nature handed us a cosmic blueprint, and our ancestors turned it into a symbol of eternity. Those old diagrams even show astronomical texts that depict this rotation, and for me it's pretty awe-inspiring to think that we could go out and look up at the same night sky that inspired our ancestors 15,000 years ago to make some mammoth tusk art. But there's more to this story. Antonio Cyrillacuenza's 2012 research points to a 4th century BC Chinese comet atlas depicting a swastika-shaped comet,
suggesting these celestial visitors might have been seen as divine signs. And in Hinduism, the swastika dances with the sun's motion, used in marriages and Diwali to invite prosperity. Each arm marks a different season. Zoroastrians saw it as the revolving sun of infinite creation, while the Jains placed it on their flag as a path to moksha. It's a thread tying the heavens to the earth, and what I believe was our ancestors' first attempt to map the cosmos. Part 2. A Shared Legacy. The Swastika Across Cultures. Now, those were just a couple well-known examples of how the swastika appears between different cultures, but we're far from done, because it appears on every inhabited continent and across every different culture up until relatively recently in the timeline. So let's take a look at some more examples. In Buddhism, it marks the Buddha's footprints, symbolizing the eternal cycle of samsara, etched into temple walls. The Hopi use it in healing rituals, tying it to the four winds and seasonal shifts, while the Navajo weave it into whirling logos, sand paintings for cosmic harmony. The ancient Greeks carved it into their temples and coins, seeing it as perpetual motion, while the Celts linked it to solar powers and sky gods in their Bronze Age art. Even in China, introduced with Buddhism, it symbolizes good fortune and longevity, while Tibet's Bon tradition spins it as the young drung, a cycle of life. The Aztecs found it in their codices, possibly tied to solar worship, and in Kailan it graces Buddhist art as a sign of auspiciousness. The Maltese etched it into prehistoric temple stones, perhaps aligning with celestial events, and the Sami of Lapland used it in shamanic art to capture the Northern Lights' life force. Jewish Hasmonean coins hint at solar ties, while Islamic decorative arts in Persia and Ottoman lands see it as celestial harmony. Bali's Hindu-Buddhist rituals embrace it for prosperity, and early Christians shaped it in cross-like forms with possible heavenly meaning. Romans adorned their mosaics with it, hinting at solar symbolism, and the Vinca culture of Neolithic Southeast Europe pressed it into pottery, perhaps for fertility. The Baltic Thundercross, or Perkana crusts, honored the god Perkons, while the Tlingit carved it into totem poles, reflecting spiritual beliefs. The Basque Labaru echoes it in their art, while Sumerians traced spiral motifs of it into their seals. The ancient Egyptians hinted at solar cycles with the swastika depicted in their art, and the Inuit carved it into ivory, linking it directly to seasonal patterns. And the global permeation of this symbol is certainly no coincidence, but I also don't think it's indicative of anything like a master race or global civilization. I don't think any of that's necessary to explain it. It seems incredibly obvious to me that as the old world sat around at night looking up at the sky, they're going to take notes of things that are fixed and don't change. One of those being Polaris, the North Star, and of course the other, amongst many other ones, would be Ursa Major. No matter what time of year it is, you can see it in the night sky, just changing its position. And depending on which one of the four cardinal points of the year you're on, well, that's how it's gonna look. So it seems obvious they would create the same symbol, charting the same four, basic seasons that everywhere in the world was paying attention to. And they would just add their own unique artistic flair to it. And that's kind of exactly what we see happening.
The Shadow of Controversy.
And now it's time we address the two controversial elephants in the room. First one being, this theory isn't without its detractors. Academics have long debated whether or not it's actually correlated with Ursa Major, because Ursa Major doesn't follow a perfectly circular elliptical pattern. It varies a little bit. But we do know with how many ancient cultures just told us flat out that it was a cosmic symbol, and how many other ones implied that it was, that's probably what a majority of the cultures were viewing it as, a rotation of Ursa Major throughout the four cardinal points of the year. But there's a good chance that some cultures were depicting the sun that way, or other heavenly rotations, but more likely than not, a majority of the cultures were depicting Ursa Major. So that's one. The second one, it's the obvious one, the Nazi correlation. So since the 1920s, the Nazis have hijacked that symbol and it's basically just been associated with them. And there's a reason for that. The Ahnenerbe was a group of scientists and academics and historians that the SS used to basically legitimize their efforts and their propaganda. They would get the Ahnenerbe to go out and do expeditions and make discoveries and basically publish papers, which they had a significant amount of academic power in the academic community around the world. And they published theories and papers promoting the master race theory and essentially that Aryans were the ones who had spread this symbol throughout the world. So Hitler used that to promote his doings, and you all know the rest. I don't feel like it's worth that much conversation because the stain of that is what we're trying to undo here. So go watch any Nazi history video if you'd like to know more about that. But I did want to point those two things out. This certainly isn't without its controversies, but I think both of them are fairly easy to tackle head on.
Part 4. Blueprints from the Stars or Cosmic Vibrations. While researching for this video, I was tagged in some pretty compelling posts over on X that made me reconsider if this symbol had anything to do with the Big Dipper or not. And one of those posts came from Adam Hirschman, who suggested that the symbol does indeed have cosmic origins, but they're definitely not related to Ursa Major. Adam suggests a deep connection between the Hercules constellation and the swastika, pointing to its shape resembling a rotating pattern just like the Big Dipper, and ties it to mythological figures like Gorgons and Satyrs, with ancient coins and art from Crete dated to around 1600 BCE, showing these symbols together. He goes further, equating Hercules with Sisyphus, placing them beneath a processional wheel tied to the North Star's shifting cycle over 26,000 years, and links this to Ophiuchus, depicted as a mountain like Olympus or Parnassus, with a 1500 BCE artifact from Greece supporting this idea. Hirschman sees the swastika as a whirlpool or a whirlwind symbol of the cosmic motion, a view that's backed by recent studies from the University of Athens, as well as NASA's 2025 precession model. Another theory that I found incredibly interesting was offered by Cymatic Jewel, who places its origins away from the cosmos and into a different realm altogether. They propose it's not about the stars but about sound, suggesting ancient cultures captured its shape through vibrations, a concept they call cymatics. They point to rituals where Hindu mantras, Tibetan singing bowls, and Native American drums, vibrating at frequencies like 136.1 Hz, 432 Hz, and 200 to 300 Hz, created patterns in the sand or water that mirror the swastika's curved arms. The idea is that these harmonic resonances, perhaps observed in natural settings like water ripples during ceremonies, inspired the symbol as a mark of harmony. Though no ancient artifacts directly prove this, the modern experiments showing similar patterns makes it a captivating alternative to consider. Part 5. The Craft of the Cosmos, Tools of Precision. Something I've wondered is if the swastika comes from the stars, how did the ancient world carve it so precisely? Well, in Thomas Wilson's 1894 book, The Swastika, he alludes to this a little bit, and notes its meticulous form on pottery and on seals, hinting at early tools like shadow clocks or astrolabes being used. Could these techniques maybe be what explains the construction of the Great Pyramid or the ancient vases? Maybe? I don't know, but it's interesting and makes me smile thinking about how much knowledge these symbols might actually be holding on to. Part 6. Living the Cosmic Code. So ladies and gentlemen,
to wrap this video up, let's not think of the swastika as a dusty old relic destined to be regulated to textbooks and forgotten archives, but rather as a tool we could be using right here, right now. See, the swastika is so powerful because it reminds us of our shared human lineage, of our cultural connections, because no matter who you were, this symbol was important to your ancestors, and it can be important to us again. It can be a reminder of our unity and the fact that we all live under the same sky. So maybe try letting that connect you to your friends, your neighbors, your enemies even, and remember that really we're all the same. And in 15,000 years of evolution, people drawing this and carving it into things, we really haven't changed all that much. So let it lead us into our divine place in the cosmos, and hopefully it'll lead you to want to find out more about this and research some of the links I'm going to put down in the description below, because these resources are incredibly valuable and are going to help us undo the damage that's been done. This symbol's ours, it belongs to us, and it's up to us to take it back. So I would love to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments below, and consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already, and sharing this out with somebody you know, because that's how we're going to make a difference and undo this narrative. I would also like to thank a number of people who helped me out in the creation of this video, so stay tuned to the end for a slide thanking everybody that helped me along the way. But until next time, my friends, be indomitable in your quest for knowledge, no matter what challenges pop up in your way. But above all, stay curious, my friends.